We have another live today on the topic of upskilling, self-leadership, and I welcome to the studio today Trevor Holmes, my dear Bevel education lead and the expert on cross-cultural relations. Welcome, Trevor, for this live.
Thank you, Ina. It's a pleasure to talk to you today.
Likewise, and you always bring the wealth of insights and different self-leadership experience. So today we will be talking about one of your core topics, cross-cultural leadership and the way how we build relations in new country. And with Bevel on, we address the topic of forced and voluntary migration, workforce displacement. So there are plenty of people who are moving the countries. And based on your experience, as you used to live in different countries and making the relations and network, friendship, partnerships with a wide variety of different nationalities. Based on your experience, what role does cross-cultural awareness play in building meaningful and trust-based relations, especially if you talk about the new country?
Right, Ina. Yeah, I mean, this is something which is not just a topic, an academic topic which I teach, but it's something which is very much part of my life, as you well know. As you mentioned, I've lived in different countries. I left England. I'm English. I left England when I was 26 years old, and since then I've lived and worked in many different places, including originally the Baltic, Lithuania, Ukraine, Switzerland, of course, as you well know. And in fact, my journey continues. I'm moving on, as you know, soon to new locations. Okay, so this is something which is not just something I'm teaching. It's part of my life, and what I can say is the impact it's had on my life, the ability to build those relationships and build them quickly, and that's the key, has really made a huge impact on my life. And that's why I'm very happy to share this information with others.
And what are your practical examples of how actually the newcomers to new countries should start building the relations? What is the first step?
Right. Well, I think that there's lots of things, of course, and it's not such an easy subject. If it was, we wouldn't have to be talking about it. But I think let's just take some three key pieces of advice. The first one is to not forget that people are different. And this sounds so crazy, isn't it? Because we talk about diversity, you're traveling in a new place, you think that everyone is aware that everybody is different. Well, actually, the problem is we often forget. So when we are with other people, we interpret their behavior the same as if we were saying it or we were doing it, or people that we know, from our home were doing it. And we forget the fact that actually what the other person means, what they're trying to communicate, is different. And that's it. So often you can, for example, someone says no, and you take that as a no from your country, and perhaps in your country no means no, but maybe, and it's quite clear in other cultures, no can often mean something quite different, and that's strange. So this is what we mustn't forget, that people are different. Okay. The second thing, I would say, the second important point I would have for people is interact. The mistake most people make when they come to a new place, the first people they contact with, the first people, are people the same as themselves. They tend to sort of immediately go to other expats, usually of the same nationality, and form a group with them. And they isolate themselves. If you think about it, that this is okay, we understand why we do that. It's for comfort. It's nice to have people you can communicate with. Maybe it's about language, that it's easier to talk to the people you know. So I'm not saying don't have those friendships, but you must interact with the local people, the people out there. So the people who are most successful at this, the people who really kind of build the relationships and settle well into a country. And I know, Ina, by the way, I know I'm speaking to someone who has done this themselves, is get out there and meet the people. Interact as much as possible. Throw yourself into every situation. That's what you must do. You should be going out first. Don't expect that people will come to you. You have to go out to them. Okay? So that's a very clear piece of advice, and something I do, and I know you do as well. So that's where it starts. And then I would say the third piece of advice to give right at the start of this, of your journey, if you're coming into a new place, is just be careful about first impressions. When you first meet people, the comment you often hear, and you hear this a lot, and it's not dependent on a particular culture or particular location. This is universal. It's like they are unfriendly. They are not welcoming. And that's often not true. It's usually the mistake. We tend to misinterpret that first contact. So what you've got to remember always, I think, most people are good. Most people are happy to see us. In fact, most people are curious about you. If you are new to a place, think about it. The neighbors, the people around, they see this new introduction to their environment, this new person arriving in this group, in this room, in this company, in this street, wherever it is. So they're naturally curious and perhaps a little suspicious, because that's normal as well for humans. We're group-orientated people. So people are always going to be a little bit careful in that first interaction. So we have to go through that. So be careful not to overinterpret the first contact, take too much from it, allow it to go past that point. Okay? Move on to the second, third, fourth, and keep going. That's what it takes. That's how you build trusting relationships.
What I find particularly interesting, and if you don't mind, I would combine your first and the last insight, because as you mentioned, we see new people, and first of all, we stick to those people who are look-alike, who are similar to us. But then actually what is happening on the basic psychology level is that those people who are different to us, we start treating as the separate tribe, right? What you are saying, we need to approach ourselves first to those people who seems to be different. And again, our mind, our brain is telling us there is the instinct of safety. There might be perceived danger there. Why? Because they can say no. But actually, I love the statement you made. People are curious, and they would love about your culture, your experience, your knowledge, etc. And here I would like to go back to the one of the thoughts I had in my mind, and what we teach in Bevel on capacity building program. We stimulate people to do networking and to do it first. And as you mentioned on your second tip, and to be active and to go to meet new people different than they are. And we work mainly with the displaced professionals, expatriate migrants, refugees, those people who had to leave for certain reasons, their motherland, and live in the new environment currently. We also, when we move, you made your own example of being in different countries, we bring our own heritage. We bring our cultural examples, so going networking with the objective to create new ecosystem in the new environment. How, in terms of building cross-cultural relations and cross-cultural communication, how you would approach or build these consistent cultures where I can share my insights and will be willing to hear the insights from other person. How not to lose this sense of own cultural heritage while going into new country, new ecosystem, and trying to adopt and to smoothly enter the new crowd.
Right. So I know that you understand this topic very well, and that's why you form the questions this way. You're exactly right. There's one key point here, that it's all about trust, isn't it? I mean, building relationships is all about trust, and that's not easy. That's a difficult thing, and it takes time. And most cultures, when you don't trust from the beginning, there's always a path you have to follow. There are, by the way, interestingly, there are some cultures which are different. For instance, Danish people trust from the first moment, and then if you don't prove it, you lose trust. But that's very unique. Most others build trust. So it's all about those little steps you're going to take. Now, one important point here is when we are seeing another person, if that person is kind of throwing away their own culture, almost kind of like, like a jacket, they're taking off their own culture, throwing it to one side, maybe even speaking negatively about their own culture. It's often done. It's very hard to trust that person. We find it uncomfortable when somebody is trying to be something they're not. It's a really difficult thing to understand. Why would someone not be happy about who they are? And that's hard to trust, and especially initially in a anything. So being proud about your culture, it's good. Talking about how you've done things, that's good. Of course, being careful about comparisons. What you often hear is some people saying, in my country it's better than here. That's not the way to make comparisons. But just to spot the differences and notice differences and use that within your conversations. Let's say, for example, greetings, which is a normal first contact. In some countries you shake hands, in some countries you kiss, even between men. It's very interesting how we greet people. So just commenting to other people, oh, this is interesting for me because it's different to how we do it. And then maybe sharing that is usually quite a good way to start to build rapport. Also, of course, language. Depends what language you're using. Internationally, a lot of people will use perhaps English, or as a common language, even though you have different cultures, maybe. But maybe you're also trying to use the local language a little bit. So language is a key component of cultural fit, of making relationships. Then you can comment on how things are said differently. Oh, we would say it like this. We would say it like that in our language. It's interesting that you say it. So using language as a point of comparison, that's good. Okay, that's often because how we say things often shows how we think. And a good example of that is sharing comparisons for these phrases we have in language. Like, for example, in English, we would say the grass is greener, meaning that somewhere else always seems to be better than where you are. Yeah. And every language has a similar phrase, but they say it differently. So Lithuanians would say, obolus skanesni kaimyno sodo. The apples are tastier in the neighbor's garden. I don't know. Maybe you can give the example in Ukrainian. How would you say?
I don't know. I don't know. Probably we make the reference to water. That the water is cleaner in the neighboring place, or something like that. There are different expressions on that. I do agree with you. Yeah.
Right. So from my experience, often taking these parts of language and using that as is a great way of building rapport, because usually we have the same ideas, but we express them differently. And that's very nice. So you sort of find out, especially imagine you're sitting at a table with a group of very mixed people. That's a really nice little game to play. How do you say it? How do you say it? And comparing the difference, finding similarities and differences. So that's a really nice way to build this. But as I say, the most important is don't give up who you are. Very important. Okay.
Yeah, and I think here we also can go into the topic of active listening, right? Because being able to build this cross-cultural communication by respecting and showing the interest and curiosity around other culture, that requires the active listening skills. When you listen what other persons say and where the green is greener or the apples are tastier in the neighboring garden, right? You can build a rapport. And recently I had a discussion with someone who asked me for the advice on networking, which is a very uncomfortable tool for that person to build the network and the ecosystem. And that person told me, like, so when I go network, literally, what should I say? Should I talk about my work, or private life, who cares, literally? But I think what the reference you are making in terms of culture is something very interesting, especially if you can joke about that, if you can make different examples, and building the rapport, asking questions from the person you are talking to
Right.
about their examples, right? And here is the whole conversation starts, and the topic is so easy and so interesting and raise the curiosity, so the door becomes
Right.
open.
That's it. Everybody is proud of their nation. So when you show curiosity to the nation in which you're in, or to the person to whom you're meeting, that's always a win. You know, we take it from a positive perspective, and that always works well.
And that always has the side topics on discussion around. As soon you are saying I'm American or I'm saying I'm Ukrainian, there are so many things to discuss in the current political and economical sphere, right? So you raise
Mhm.
additional topics.
Yeah.
Trevor, thank you
No, of
so much.
course. I would say 2 points here. I would always avoid any topics, for example, like politics or religion, in an early stage of any relationship, because you just don't know. That, be careful on those topics. And I think I think that's the same advice for making friends in your own culture. You know, so you've always got to know people a little bit better before you get into those topics. So stay with safe things like food, greetings, the safer topics where it's easy to talk about. There's not necessarily a challenge. And I would say the second point is, if the other person suspects you have an agenda, that you are doing this just because you want something, that's always a negative. Okay. Remember, people are curious, but they're a little bit suspicious. So if you come and start asking for something, or start saying, "Oh, can I?" It's not good. So be generous. Be generous from your side. I think that's always a great step. You're the new person, you're the person coming in. Don't expect to get from them. Instead, think about what I can give to you, or what I can give out. And that always works.
Absolutely, with the giving attitude, and there are so many things we can give, and especially considering the social impact cause we are working on Bevel on Association by providing community support, right ecosystems, capacitation, and upskilling opportunities to vulnerable communities, making them visible in the bigger crowd, and especially in the international crowd always helps. And I thank you, Trevor, for being part of this impactful program. And again, giving your insights, as the cross cultural leadership is one of your core topics, and you have wide experience from the professional field, but also from your personal by
Yeah.
moving from country to country during your career.
Yeah. It's, as I say, this is more than just a topic. This is something I think that I know has impacted my life. I'm proud to say it's impacting my children's life, and I see the future that they're able to build because of this ability to interact with people from different cultures. I think it's so important, and I'm very happy to share it with those who are looking to improve their performance, whether it's today or tomorrow, in whichever place they may end up.
And we will be talking in a couple of days about the cross-cultural leadership again as the whole training topic. And I encourage who is watching us now to follow Bevel on page on LinkedIn and on Instagram to see where the announcements for the next events are coming, because Trevor will be running the open session available for everyone to access on the cross-cultural relations and how you adapt yourself in new country by not losing the heritage of your own culture and building the new supportive ecosystem. Trevor, thank you so much for being with me today on this
Thank you.
interview, on this live, and I'm very much waiting for your open training on cross-cultural relations.
All right. Thank you very much, Ina. It's a pleasure.